to another Wealth Coffee Chat. Hope you're all awesome and well. Monday the 26th of July. It's all happening. Wherever you are, stay safe. Be sensible. All right. The Facebook Live's warming up. I can see a few people jumping on. If you're there, give us a shout out in the chat. Welcome back to the regulars. Often we get a few people coming back for a bit of a tune in to Wealth Coffee Chat. If you're new to the show, you're stumbling across, give us a shout out in the chats. Hey Ashley, how are you, mate? There's Simon there, Alison, good morning, Aaron, Corrine, morning all to you guys. If you're new to the show, Jason Witten's my name. Each morning, get together with a bunch of crazy crew who are up for a bit of property investing, tips, techniques, ideas, pontifications, and we talk all about that. I've been investing over 20 years, coaching property investors across Australia and New Zealand, over 18. And each morning, get to share a little bit of my experiences. We've done a few deals, just so you know. Thousands, as a matter of fact. And along the way, we've learned a few things. So we share that. Morning, Jared. How are you, champ? Christopher. Stay safe, mate. Sean. Anya. Devinder. How are you, mate? Good to see you. Nick. How are you, brother? Dino. Morning, my love. There you go. Well, it's all warmed up now. A bunch of people on this morning. There's Rodney popping in. How are you, champion? Good to see you. Let's talk about liquidity. Liquidity, what an interesting word. It's a word that's chucked around a little bit, often by people who want to sound smart and maybe bamboozle you a bit. The idea of liquidity is an interesting one, and especially when it comes to real estate, or especially when it comes to investing in anything, we've got to understand what it means. And I want to sort of demystify the idea of what liquidity means. Liquidity means this, gang. Liquidity is, if I said to you, go get $10,000 right now, could you get it, and how fast could you get it? Okay? How fast could you get that money? Okay? Liquidity is the speed or the access to your cash. Okay? Now, it's an interesting thing. It's a very important thing to understand, liquidity, the idea that if you get into trouble or strife or you need money or something you need to change in your personal financial life, the idea that access to cash, access to value, access to money is something that you need. Okay, and as a property investor, as any investor, we take our cash because cash sitting in the bank account is trash. You guys know this. Money just sitting uninvested is literally devaluing. And we take our cash and we put it into things, property, shares, offset accounts, whatever it might be. We put it in somewhere, and then if we need it back, the speed at which we can get it back is important to understand, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today, gang, the idea of liquidity. How fast can you get your cash? It's an important idea. I just want to touch on these two things because for me and for you, we need to understand that valuations, the value of your things, okay, certainly for me, valuation of your things is not as an important number as a lot of people make out. Alison said here, I think if shares are sold, you can get your cash in 10 days. Right, which is an interesting one, Alison. So we'll talk about that in a minute because there's this argument, there's this conversation used often by, unbalanced and misinformed opinions around shares that you're better off buying shares because they have better liquidity. Now, the technical answer is yes. It's easier to sell them because there's more buyers, it's faster, but liquidity, there's a fair few ways to get about making sure that happens. So let's talk about this. valuation, okay? Valuation in my world equals vanity, okay? Because if you have something that's worth $1 million right now, and there's equity in that value in that property, and you can't get it, you can't use it, it's irrelevant. You know, I talk to a lot of people who've got lots of equity, but they don't have any cash flow, okay? Cash flow equals comfort, okay? Comfort. When your assets, the money, the cash, the properties, the shares, whatever you own, whatever you invest in, is creating cash flow for you, that's where your comfort factor comes from, gang, okay? So let's quickly talk about, let's dive into the 4 ways you can have liquidity, or liquidity is created for you in the world of investing, okay? I'm just going to move this little thing out of the way. I'm going to whack it up over there. There we go. So let's talk about the 4 ways that can happen. Just going to put it, there we go. So it's not in my face. All right, 4 ways we can have liquidity when it comes to our assets. Now, Alison mentioned one before, and we're going to talk about, let's talk about this. Let's talk about property, and we talk about the share market, shares, okay? They're the 2 main assets when it comes to the world of liquidity, and maybe we can talk about businesses, but I think businesses are the worst when it comes to the idea of creating liquidity, depending on what you're up to. All right, so number 1, the easiest, the quickest way to create liquidity, which is get access to your cash, is sell. Sell your thing, all right, whatever it is. Now, you guys know my opinion on this idea. You do all this effort, you go to all this trouble to buy assets. Why would you want to sell them? Why would you want to end up being in a position, being forced to sell your assets because you need cash, you need access to money, okay? Now, for me, I think that's the worst one, okay? That would be my last choice, because the next one for me is preferable if you structure yourself correctly, okay? The next one, leverage. Okay, so we need to get cash, gang. All right, I've got a property, I've got shares, I've got some value in there. My property's worth 500, my property's worth 700, my loan is 500. I need some money quick because whatever, emergency, opportunity, issue. So I sell. There's costs involved in the sale, okay? In property or in shares, capital gains tax. There's taxes involved. There'll be an agent's fee or a brokerage, okay? And probably some legal fees as well, okay? Now, remember this, right? You know, capital gains tax, you know, if you made a $200,000 gain, you're going to pay tax on 50% of it, $100,000. Let's say your tax rate is 30%, you're going to pay 30 grand in capital gains tax. Capital gains tax, agent fee might charge you 20, now you're up to 50 grand of cash out of your pocket, and maybe some legals, okay? So we need to understand what that might trigger when we sell. I'm not a fan of selling because you end up, you know, diminishing your asset base, and then you end up with the same problem, which is now you don't have any market exposure to growth, to income, to tax deductions, and you know, you had to liquidate for cash for whatever reason. Okay, and it'd be a much better idea, gang, is if you forecasted, you planned, you had strategy for the things that were coming into your future, so you don't have to be caught in a spot where you have to sell, okay? Leverage. Now, leverage is this. You know, you guys understand leverage, I hope, I'm quite sure. The idea that if your property or shares, let's say you have, this thing's worth 700, you've got a loan here of 300, and you have an ability, an available equity ability up to maybe 80 or 90%, having access to that money is super important. I call this the equity lock. Okay, equity lock, equity lock. Now, I've done a video on equity lock as well, or access to equity. Go and track that one down, gang. But this is how you should have your properties at any time. Available money at the drop of a hat in a redraw facility or a split, depending on how you set it up for lending purposes. And that money is available to you at any point in time. Now, that sometimes we call that a buffer, gang, but our buffer is for emergencies, not for liquidity, okay? So anytime you've got value in your properties where you haven't set your maximum loan value, if you look in your portfolio right now, gang, and your fixed loan to value ratio is less than 80% right now, I would encourage many of you to review and get access to that equity, locking it in right now, getting access to that equity, okay? Now, the challenge is, can you get leverage on shares? No, it's very difficult to get leverage on shares. Matter of fact, it's actually quite dangerous because shares are quite volatile. Shares can go up faster, way faster than real estate. Real estate's a slow and steady, wins the race type of vehicle. It's like the tortoise and the hare. Shares can go up 100% in a bloody week. You know, it's crazy. It's good if you want that exposure. Nothing wrong with it. I'm a big fan of all three of these asset classes. I like to store my wealth here, and I like to accelerate my wealth here. For me, that's my strategy. Whatever your strategy is, you know, go for it, all right? So, but the challenge is, can you get leverage in shares? No. Shares is rubbish. You go to the bank and say, yo, standalone CBA, try this today, you lot. Standalone CBA, I'm going to buy your CBA shares. Can you give me a 90% loan, please? You go, they'll laugh you out of the bank, all right? And then, righto, let's get some leverage on a business. I put $1 million into my business to start it up. I want that $1 million back. Can I get a loan against $1 million? You go and ask what the bank's going to tell you. Yeah, not a chance, mate. Stand alone on the business itself, not using other things like your house and other things as security. It is going to be absolute disastrous, gang, as you go. So leverage on businesses and shares, standalone leverage, rubbish, okay? Property, that's why I like property. Property ticks the box here, and if you set it up properly, the liquidity is really important. And here asks a very good question. Does unlocking the equity on the property depend on serviceability? Yes, it does. Okay, good question. Now, the challenge for all of us, gang, is to improve our servicing as we go along. Okay, I've done this one. Excuse me. I've done a couple of videos on this one too. Track those down if you want to have a look. But anyhow, the idea when we unlock equity and get serviceability up through improving your income, improving your rents, adding some other income streams into your financial situation, that's an important part. And over time, what happens is, you know, the ability for you to get access to this equity gets lower just because the values do tend to compound themselves into the future, okay? So wherever you are right now, getting your coach to analyze the maximum value or LVR that you should be aiming for and having access to this liquidity or some capital is something to understand. So two pretty simple, straightforward ways. Another way of liquidity, which, you know, some people might argue when I write this one down that it's not liquidity, but I reckon it is. It's just drip-fed liquidity, right? It's cash flow. Gang, if the property is giving you cash flow back weekly, fortnightly, monthly, then that's actually drip-fed liquidity. You get the positive cash flow from your properties, and where do you put it, gang? You put it in your offset account. It sits in the offset account now, and you have access, instant access to that cash, okay? Drip fed liquidity. This is direct, and large liquidity, and these two would be drip fed liquidity, maybe even indirect liquidity, okay, and taxed back, okay? You're paying 50 grand of tax. You now have depreciation. You have now tax deductions. You get 10 grand back in your tax that year. You put it in your offset account. Now that gives you access to cash and liquidity, gang, okay? Now, it's pretty important to understand what that looks like. So hopefully that makes sense, talking through those concepts, because I hear that often when it comes to the world of real estate. Oh, it's rubbish, you got no liquidity. Well, for me, I like that there's no liquidity, and you have to sell because it stops you, well, it limits you from being a good time bloody Charlie. All right, you come along for the good times, but you don't want to hunker down when there's no capital growth around. You know, hey, listen, nothing is going to grow continuously forever. And real estate's that like a really slow and steady wins the race type of vehicle. You guys know this. Buy well, never sell. It's a 15-year journey, and we're going to do great because property is a fabulous place to store wealth. And if you guys have access to liquidity, access to equity, there is equity arbitrage acceleration techniques that you can use your property to create extra cash flow, which then folds back into servicing, okay? So it becomes a little bit more interesting. If you guys want to know about that, reach out and get your coach. You guys in mentoring, you should be able to connect with your coach and ask them about the equity arbitrage acceleration strategies. If you're not in mentoring, you don't have a coach, you should get one. At the end of the day, if you want to create, an amazing portfolio, you want to get to the Olympics and win a gold medal. Technically, that's the statistics as a property investor of succeeding. They don't do it by themselves. You're not going to do it by yourself. You need some great people around you. Anyway, that's it from me today, gang. Wealth Coffee Chat done and dusted. Liquidity is important. Which means how fast can you get access to cash if you need it for an opportunity or an emergency, okay? That's the thing, okay? Don't let these big names, big words confuse us. And if you've got enough cash, you've got money in the buffer, you've got access to your equity, you're all set up, then 9 times out of 10, you should be pretty fine, okay, as we go along. And the challenge with selling, gang, this is the problem, and I've been squeezed before, I can tell you, I know it hurts. What are the only types of properties that sell when you're getting squeezed? Your really good ones. They're the ones that sell fast, like your awesome ones. And they're the ones you want to bloody keep. Anyway, it's I could go on this one, that's for sure. Hopefully that makes sense, gang. Hopefully that was useful. Give us a shout out in the chat if there is anything else. As always, leave a comment in Facebook or YouTube or wherever, I will see it. If there's anything else you want me to discuss, offer an opinion on, whatever that might be, always happy to do so when it comes to these Wealth Coffee Chats in the morning. All right, gang, it's done. It's dusted. Wealth Coffee Chat done for Monday, the 26th of July. You guys have an awesome day. Join me tomorrow for another Wealth Coffee Chat. And until then, take care. Bye for now.